Welcome to Andy D. Cole's podcast. Please like, share and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy D. Cole's podcast. Press like and subscribe.
Welcome to Andy D. Cole's. Sit back and enjoy. As we dive deeper down into the rabbit hole and into the unknown.
Hello and welcome to Friday's show. Today it's just me and Nicole. Sarah's not feeling too well, and Tommy's probably still at another birthday. I think he's like the birthday crasher, isn't he?
He's having a birthday going on for weeks now. It's the longest birthday party ever.
Yeah, why do we not get an invite? That's why I want to know. Bins us off. He wants a cake all to himself. Yeah. Right, so 2 updates. First one, we have a Discord online chat, which is 24/7. There are subheadings in there for different categories if you want to talk about anything. Joe will put the link up sometime soon. If you want to talk about anything from the show or put any links up yourself or anything like that, it's just a general chat. There are not restrictions, but terms and conditions. So you do need to read them so you don't get booted. And that on Sunday at 5 p.m. UK time, 12 noon, Nicole, EST, we have Staticon. We have the full 4. So there's going to be the Rothmans, Ron and Lords, me, Nicole and Sarah. So it's going to run 2, maybe 3 hours, depending, and see what we get from that. And the last update is, because it's the first of the month, we're going to be giving away 10 memberships that are going to last a month. So good luck to anyone who gets them. I'll just do them as we go through the show. So now we're going to bring the guest on, and Nicole is going to introduce him. Mm-hmm. So this is Dr. Ian.
Hi.
Hi. So
Welcome
today,
to the show.
Good to be here.
We have Dr. Ian Rubenstein. Rubenstein.
Like Frankenstein. Take out the
bell.
You take out the Frank, you give it a little rub.
That's the way to explain it. So Dr. Rubenstein is a practicing physician. He is a GP or primary care doctor who also is a medium.
Yep.
That right?
That's right. Well, I claim to be a medium. Well, what I would say is I train to be a medium.
Okay. So,
and I use my mediumship in my work as a GP. So that's that's an interesting journey which we can talk about. But it's become part of who I am, and my patients sort of expect it now. I mean, I'm not doing a lot of. I mean, COVID sort of changed everything. And the way the health service is in the UK at the moment, there's so few doctors that most of it's done remote now. But I still use it. Yeah, and I'm sitting in Circle. I'm developing. I mean, I'm aspiring to become a platform medium, but that really is scary. That is very scary. So I've been training for 20 years now. Yeah, since
Wow.
2004. Yeah. And I'm still, I mean, I'm better on one-to-one because that's what I do as a doctor. But getting up on platform in a spiritualist church is really tough. I mean, really
something
tough.
else in it.
Yeah, well, I used to believe that, but before I knew what I was getting into, that I used to think the spiritualists were all very credulous people and they'd take anything. But once you get into a spiritualist church, you realize it's not like that at all. Everybody's out to trip you up because no one, you're only as good as your last message. The congregation is really critical because half of them are mediums. They're looking to trip you up.
They're waiting for that thing, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's really lethal. You know, you've got to be really careful. So, and the other problem I've got is that whilst my heart believes it, my head is still full of all my science stuff, and I always think, but, and unless you absolutely wholeheartedly give yourself to it, it's a bit difficult. So
did you find it? I was going to say, did you find it difficult, like, as a transition, going from what you trained at university, like you said, through the textbooks and the science side to it, to right? Well, that's kind of going to one side now, and I'm going to go down the spiritual side.
I suppose you could ask, is the Pope Catholic? Yeah, absolutely. It used to drive me nuts because I didn't ask for this. It just it happened. And when some weird stuff started happening to me, and I found myself being directed into spiritualism, which I never expected. I found myself sitting in a development circle full of Cockneys, basically a bunch of Cockneys in Walthamstow. I grew up in the London borough of Tottenham, which is just next door to Walthamstow. And they're my people. But I hadn't really, as a doctor and going to medical school, and I'd mixed with very educated people. And although my patients were still working class, I didn't actually have many friends who were like that still. All my friends I kept contact with all gone to university. So when I started mixing with people, first, it was lovely to get back to my roots. And second of all, it was very interesting to see how people who hadn't gone to university actually thought. And that was a big awakening for me, because I realized that, I was 40, I'm 68 now, so I was 48 when I got into this, so quite late. So I'd had quite a career, I was midway through my career. It wasn't until I started mixing with ordinary people on their terms and seeing how they thought that I realized that I'd been speaking the wrong language to my patients. I always, you sit there explaining things to people and they go, yeah. But actually, and a lot of doctors think, well, why don't they understand it? Why don't they get what I'm saying? And I realized that we've just been speaking different language. Not that they were stupid or anything. It's just that the way I'd been taught to think at university in doing a science subject was very different to the way, first of all, most people thought. So for me, it was like analytical and trying to understand what was going on. And I realized that what my patients actually were after was actually what you call a narrative, like a story of how they came to have their illness or what was going on to them. It's called the narrative approach. So, in medicine, you make a diagnosis, which is like a scientific approach or a description of the disease. And as a GP, you get to learn the psychology and the social. Well, as a medical student, you learn the physical side, but as a practicing doctor, pretty soon learn that the psychology counts. And when you be going to general practice, family physician, you realize that the social aspects are important. I think what I learned from my time as being sitting in my circle was that there was another aspect. You could call it a spiritual dimension. And I say it's more like a search for meaning. What does this mean to me in my life? Which I sort of was coming to. I used to do a lot of counseling, I still do. But I think that sort of crystallized it for me. So I got a lot more than just the mediumship out of that.
Yeah.
And other stuff as well. So the other thing is doctors, you're not taught to be intuitive. But every doctor knows that there's this gut feeling. It's called clinical intuition.
Yeah.
And they say it comes with experience. And it's thought to be due to, accumulated wisdom. It's a bit like riding a bike. If you think about it, it all goes wrong. If you don't think about it, it happens.
Yeah.
But you can't, they say you can't train with that. But training as a medium, I discovered that my intuition got stronger. And I was able to tap in to my intuition more, which I didn't expect. But I found it really, really hard to put aside my critical mind.
Yeah. Did you? Oh, sorry. Go on, Nicole.
I was going to ask, how do you kind of reconcile that? Do you think there is like a science behind mediumship and the paranormal that we just don't understand, or do you think it's completely like mystical?
Well, what I say, I don't believe in supernatural. I believe it's all natural, and I believe that there is. Science is just an approach, observation, and then working out what's going on. So you could argue there's a sort of supernatural science if you want. I think a lot of it's due to perspective. Personally, I've come to the conclusion now that we really don't understand the nature of reality, big time. And I think the current scientific paradigm is that it's just physicality, and somehow consciousness mysteriously arises from that. And I really don't buy that. In fact, I never really bought that anyway. I think because when I was at school, I used to do hypnosis, and I had a hypnosis practice when I was just starting out in medicine. And I've always been interested in alternative medicine, like I do acupuncture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've always felt that there was more of a holistic way of perceiving the universe rather than just the discrete chopped up bits that science does. I love science. I think it's great. The fact that we're talking here is science, no doubt about that. But I think it's a limited science, and I think there's more going on. And I also think that maybe consciousness doesn't arise from the physical world, but in somehow consciousness is primary, or physicality is wrapped up within consciousness. A bit like a virtual world in a computer. In that, that's the best way to understand, like the Matrix, But my working hypothesis is that consciousness creates the world. But the big problem with that, though, is then if consciousness is primary, how do you explain unconsciousness? Which people don't say. But if consciousness is primary, how do you explain anesthesia or unconscious? And the way around that is to think that there's something weird with time. So you very quickly, if you take this stuff serious, you very, very quickly come to the point that everything about what we know is just. There's a guy called Donald Hoffman. He's a scientist, and he says basically that reality is like the desktop on your computer. It's a view of reality. It's a way. It's there's an underlying computer, but we don't see that. And that what we're seeing is a user interface. And I'm becoming a subscriber of that theory. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, someone explained something very similar the other week to that. So it kind of that is starting to make a lot of sense now. It's just like a front. Everything that's behind it. As soon as you, like you said, if you go into the computer, you've got all these different things running it and stuff going on in the background that you probably, if you've never used a computer before, you won't even know it was there.
Yeah.
So who is that doctor that you just named?
Don Hoffman.
John Hoffman.
Don Hoffman. He's a scientist, and he's got this theory of, I think it's called an idealistic view. The idea is it's not a materialist universe. It's something behind it, like an idea, an idealist view. It's called. Doesn't mean it's the best, but it means it. It's a bit like Plato's view, which was that there's something behind reality. When I was a teenager, I used to read a lot about Hermeticism, as above, so below, and all this sort of stuff, which is like Western mysticism, which is something I always think about. So I've come to there's a couple of conclusions. Either we're living in the Matrix, and there's absolutely everything is just a user interface. So we really haven't got a clue what's behind anything, or as above, so below, that there is a spiritual world which mirrors our world. Our world mirrors that. so that you could argue there's no separation between matter and spirit. But I mean, it becomes, I mean, you could really do your head in.
Yeah.
I mean,
just a little bit.
yeah. So you have to have a framework to work in. And I mean, I never thought that I would end up in the spiritualist framework. But the thing about spiritualism is it's evidence-based. So you're only as good as, first of all, there's a lot of evidence from spiritualism. A lot of scientists of the Victorian era were really into it. And there is evidence. I mean, not the evidence isn't always the best of evidence, and there is some very good evidence. But you know, when you get a message from a medium, which is spot on, with lots and lots of things, it's very hard to think, well, where did that come from? You may say, well, it may be telepathy, but okay, even if it's telepathy, that's also weird. That's not meant to be in science. So
No.
either way, you're leaving the currently accepted science behind. Which I think's great, because you know, you know, it makes life a lot more interesting. I mean, I'm prepared to admit I'm wrong, and that I've just been sort of cobbling things together. But some weird stuff's happened to me in my life, which I really can't explain. So yeah. So do you want me to tell you one of the
like what?
Yeah. Just before you do, can
Yeah.
I just ask one question, just on the like the doctrine, medical side? When you was like switching over from the science to the spirituality, did you get a lot of flack from other GPs or people in your social circle? Or were they
You know
like,
what? You know what I called it professional professional ice skating, as on skating on thin ice professionally. And I would lie in bed at night thinking, why am I doing this? Because I was sort of, when you get into this, I don't know if you've ever been through this, but you become what I call the space cadet phase. You know, when you open up, I mean, you can call it a Kundalini awakening. The idea is you open up, you get cracked open, and you literally go, wow, you know. And everybody, I was the guy at a party with a glass of wine and a celery stick, backing you into a corner, talking nonstop about what was happening to me. You know, I mean, this happens. It's like Earth to Ian, come in, you know. But you know, eventually you go through the space cadet, and I think it helped that I was sort of 48 and married with 2 boys. It's interesting. Although I'm Jewish, I'm not practicing, but they say that the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, shouldn't be studied unless you're a married man with children over the age of 40, because it's so destabilizing. So I mean, I'm not into Kabbalah or anything like that, but basically, the minute you get into this, you can lose your moorings. And I think we've all met people who've gone off into these weird things and have lost touch with reality. So you need something to bring you down. So I was that person, but working in a busy practice, I mean, you know, where you're on call and seeing people, that kept me grounded. I was very lucky. I mean, I worked with a bunch of doctors who are very open-minded. And I mean, listen, when you're a bunch of doctors, and I work in a large practice in a working class area in North London, Northeast London, Enfield, which is where the Enfield poltergeist was, by the way. We'll talk about that later.
Yes.
So one of the doctors starts thinking that he's seeing his dead patients or speaking to disembodied voices. What are you going to think? And my partner, you know, I talked about it to my partners, and they said, well, as long as you can do the job, just get on and do the job, because we're so busy.
Just get on with it.
Yeah, but actually, I mean, they saw it was actually interesting, and so I had. This was the time when they started introducing appraisal for GPs, and the guy, my first appraiser was a guy called Dr. John Lorna, who's a very erudite doctor, and he's written books on Freud and psychotherapy. And I had a chat, and I said, John, this weird stuff's happening to me, and he talked about my approach. He said, Ian, I think you should pursue it. It's obviously helping you, and your patients like it. So he sort of encouraged me to develop it. And he encouraged me to write a book about it. He said, you won't make any money on it, but it'll be a key to open doors. I mean, like this. And he was right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
He said,
well, yeah, because it was Neil Ward that put me in contact with you. He emailed me and said, look, you might want to get this guy on. He's a practicing doctor.
Oh, he's a lovely guy.
Oh, he was. I don't know if he still is. Here's his Facebook. And I think it was the same night. That's when I sent you a friend request, and I think we started chatting the day after, didn't we?
Yeah.
So
bless you, Nico.
I'm so glad he connected us and all that.
So you're going to ask me about? I got one complaint from a patient about this. This woman
Yeah.
came to see me, and she had a swollen knee, and I examined her and made a diagnosis and gave her some anti-inflammatory gel to rub in, and then she left the room, made a complaint to my practice manager, and the complaint was, my father-in-law died 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Rubenstein didn't give me a message from him.
Aww.
At that point, that was the point where the scales fell from my eyes. I thought, I've got this wrong. You know, my view of what I'm meant to be doing is actually, I thought I was going to get a complaint for doing it. And I got a complaint for not doing it when the people heard about it.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that I've got everything backwards. I need to reevaluate what doctors are, what our role in society is, what people expect. So I've come up with a few ideas as to why, medicine's never been so effective, but I don't know many doctors who are happy, both in the NHS and in America and any other part of the world at the moment. All doctors aren't happy with medicine, and the patients don't seem to be that happy either, even though medicine's never been so effective.
Yeah.
And I think I've got a few ideas about that as to why. But anyway, we can talk about that later. There's so much.
Yeah, I work in pharmacy, so I see the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, basically, I actually think that we are, doctors are what I would call suburban shamans, or you call shamans in the States. In other words, we have a shamanistic role. And if you think about what shamans do, they go on a sick person comes to you, and then they go on a vision quest or a spirit quest and come back with a cure. And what do doctors do? In the UK, you see your GP, and he would, consult Google or whatever, or ask his colleagues, or ask a consultant, and then come back with a cure. And often people would come with. I'm always interested in people's problems as well, not just their medical thing. And I realized that actually we should be medicine men. Yeah. And that's what patients want. Mm-hmm. But doctors don't want that. Doctors think they're scientists. But I'm talking about GPs now. Physicians, family physicians. But actually, but we are science informed. But actually, what I do is a craft which is informed by science. But actually, what we're doing is magic, ritual magic, actually. And a lot of it is ritual. And a lot of what's going on in medicine now with what they call evidence-based medicine is throwing out all the what they call the nonsense, so that it all gets trimmed down. It's cost-effective, hard scientific medicine, which works, but it's missing a lot of what people want. If a lot of what happens to people is problems in their lives, trying to make sense of illnesses that you can't do a lot of, just going down the science route doesn't really get you very far.
No,
doesn't mean you have to speak to dead people though. But I mean,
but I was told, not all doctors, but the doctor works out what's wrong with you, and then the pharmacist knows what medication to give for it, because the doctor would go in and ask the pharmacist, "This is wrong with him. What do you suggest would be the best meds for it?" I'm not saying all doctors do that, but I know of a few that have done that.
Yeah, I mean, the doctor works out, and it depends what you. I mean, if it's something simple, but often it's complex, and often you have to work it out with the patient what's going on. Half the time, the patient doesn't know what's wrong with it. They come in with something. And this is the other thing is, and this may not apply to you, Nicola. I don't know, but in the health service, it's all becoming trimmed down and online and emails, which helps. I mean, if you're busy at work, that's great. But often people don't know what's wrong with them. They don't even know what's wrong. You know, they think there's something wrong with something. But I can tell you. Do you want to hear a story?
Yeah.
Medical story.
Love stories.
So this is jumping ahead. So I'll use this guy's name because he actually doesn't mind me using his name. He actually was on a talk with me and he came online. So Vic came to see my practice about maybe 5 years ago with a cough, and he's in his 70s. Persistent cough, couldn't talk, and he was just choking. It's a terrible state. Had various tests. He was then eventually sent up to the hospital with suspected lung cancer. Had CT scan, everything. Yeah, and he'd been ill for quite a while before he came. And at the point that he came
Yeah.
to see us. He was really in a bad way. CT scan came back. He was due to see me, and he'd had a year of this. And he came into my room, and I said, "Well, Vic, your CT scan's fine. You know, they can't find anything wrong with you." And he burst into tears. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Well, I was hoping you'd find something wrong because I can't live like this." And I knew Vic, but I hadn't really been involved with his care up to this point. And I said, let's change tack. You know, anything happen just before you had a cough? And there's the normal things I ask anyway. Everything okay at home? You know, relationship problems, any financial problems? Has anyone died? You know, because they're the sort of major life events.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, my brother-in-law, Ken, died. Do you think it could be that? And I said, well, you know, possibly. I mean, we were very upset. He said, yeah, we were best mates. So, normally, I mean, even in the old days, I'd have probably brought this up. But at that time, I then said to him, do you want me to see if I can pick anything up? Because I knew he was interested in spiritualism. So I sort of sat there. I don't go into a trance. I just opened up a bit and sort of saw what I could get. And first thing I saw was a series of, in my mind's eye, series of whiskey miniature bottles, you know, little miniature bottles of whiskey. I said, that's what I'm seeing. I just told him, look, this is what I'm seeing, Vic. Does it mean anything to you? He said, yeah. He said he used to collect whiskey miniatures. I thought, great, that's my link. And then I said, I can see he's in a pub and you're in a pub with him. Did you drink together? Yeah, got that. Then I was in this workshop. It got much more vivid. Once I get the link, then the images come thick and fast. I was in this workshop, and I could describe the instrument. I said, I'm in this workshop, and I can see these instruments. They're like spoons, or they're called curettes in the trade. I don't know what they are. He said, yeah. He said he was a surgical instrument maker. He made, they're called heart spoons. These are like things they use for taking hearts out for heart transplants. They're specific things they have to be handmade. And as I saw all these maps, I knew he wasn't a reader, but he had a lot of technical manuals. He said, yeah, you're describing his workshop. And then I saw a big green field with a ditch on one side with flags. And I couldn't work out what it was, lots of little flags. I said, Vic, I'm seeing this field with flags in it. I don't know what I'm seeing. And he started laughing. He said, I shouldn't tell you this. He said, but he was a golfer. And he said he wanted his ashes scattered on the golf course. And they wouldn't let him do it. So he said, we did it one day without them knowing.
He just went on there.
Everything he said, you've said to me made sense. I said, look, I don't know if that helps. He said, yeah. So he cheered up, and then he left me. And then he came back to see me after about a month, maybe 6 weeks. And I was dreading seeing him because I thought, I don't know what to give him. And he came into my room and I said, how are you doing, Vic? And he said, I'm cured. I said, what do you mean cured? He said, 3 days after you gave me that message, my cough stopped. He said, when you gave me the message, I felt this release. I said, what do you think it was? He said, well, I think you're in touch with Ken. I said, well, I'm not sure I was in touch with, because I can't say whether I was or not. But maybe just talking about Ken had made you realize what it was, maybe help release it. He said, no. He said, no, you were in touch with him. I said, okay. So and my patients don't understand how come, Doc, you give me the message, you don't bloody believe it. I said, my head doesn't do belief. You know, I'm looking for evidence. And you're only ever as good as your last minute. I think, yeah, that's pretty good evidence. And then the doubts creep in again. So, yeah, I mean, that's my cross to bear, I'm afraid. But I mean, that's an example of how healing this can be.
Yeah. Because I just wanted to ask, how, with you kind of like passing that message on, because even though it was visual, it was still a message. How did that stop his cough?
I don't know. I mean, my working theory as a doctor is that sometimes if we believe that our mind is our brain's up there, right? And then you've got forget all that. Forget it.
Yeah.
If you're Hindu, right? My wife's Indian, advanced Hindu culture. They talk about the chakras. I never, ever in 1,000 years thought I'd be going about chakras. Right? I now this mad doctor who goes on about chakras. That's how far down the rabbit hole I've gone. But I mean, the Hindu concept of how our bodies work is we make this distinction between the body and the mind, but they don't. Yeah. The mind is distributed throughout your body, and it's like there's the physical side of it, and then there's higher harmonics, like octaves on the scale. So the next octave up would be so you've got your glands, and the next octave up are your chakras, your energy centers. Yeah. And you can argue that, I mean, what an Ayurvedic practitioner would say is there's energy stuck there. The heart, the heart chakra. And he hadn't realized that. And talking about it relieved it. Maybe even giving him a message, maybe helped release it, helped him realize that there was something there. Maybe that helped.
Block.
Yeah,
it's something. Yeah, a blockage, and it's just.
So I mean, as a doctor, people come in with, "I've got to get it off my chest," or you're doing my head in, all this stuff. A pain in the ass. If a young man comes in and he's sort of got piles or rectal bleeding or something, once you've excluded anything serious, often it is painful. You say, "Well, is life literally a pain in the ass?" And say, "Yeah, funny you should say that, doc." So I mean, you could also say there's something stuck in the root chakra. It's a different. What I'm saying is, I think we're all using this. We're using different terms to describe the same thing.
I'm going to use that now. I'm going to tell people to shove it in their root chakra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would never say that.
That sounds a little nicer than the alternative, though.
Yeah. No, where I come from, they say, "Stick it up your ass, mate." That's it.
That's London for you.
Yeah. So do you get a lot of patients that are asking you, like, when you give them a diagnosis or advice, they're like, "Okay, is this like a medical thing or is this a medium thing?" Because I've had that happen to me.
No, I make it quite clear that I don't do, and I actually had a big chat with my guides about this, and we can talk about guides again because it's still hard. But I look, this is a personal journey for me. So I'm looking for evidence, and the best evidence if you give a message. So I'm not a spiritual healer. Now I probably have a healing guide. If you're spiritualist, you believe you've got a healing guide, and they're working with you. But that goes with it. I mean, I've been told that every doctor and nurse on the planet who's open to this will have guides working with them at a higher level. But I'm not. I do not do that. I mean, I've had an acupuncture practice, which. We offered acupuncture on the NHS, and I do a little bit of massage, some sort of manipulation, which I learned from a physio. I picked up some techniques on the way, but I don't do healing. I thought when I was getting into this, I'd be going towards healing. I actually went to some healing classes, and I thought, the trouble with healing is you've got to be passive, right? And I'm not a passive. I'm a Leo. I like to get stuck in. So with healing, you're going to let go. I mean, you have to let go for mediumship, but at least you're the guy giving the message. You're the star. So in healing, you have to sort of let go and let them work through you, and that's not the energy that I bring to a consultation, really. And also it makes it clear that I'm a Western doctor. I'm informed by other things, but I'm trained in Western medicine. I'm not offering any other stuff, and that makes it that probably keeps me out of falling through the professional ice, the lake that's frozen over. Because you've got to be really careful professionally with these things. And the other thing is I don't try and convince people that I'm right. I don't even know if I'm right. No. So it's like when I say, "Look, let's see if you're comfortable doing this. Let's play a game." It's almost like it's not quite 20 questions. There are some spiritualist things where it becomes like that, but let's see where we go with this. It's a sort of way of doing, as you want to argue, counselling, intuitive counselling. But I mean, I'd never thought I'd pick this up from spiritualism. But there you go. Life takes you on journeys.
Well, I'll just quickly say, I had acupuncture a few years ago. I'd done my lumbar spine in, and I was going for physio. And as she was putting the needles in my back, she was saying, did one in the bit there between my thumb and finger. And she said, "That's for," and she was giving off the different chakras. And there's a thing on the wall what each pinpoint is for
Yeah.
each part. And it did the trick for about, I'd say at least 3-4 months. I only had like 2-3 sessions because it was on the NHS. But before that, I was on like 75 mil of amitriptyline every day.
Yeah.
And then I literally stopped taking them after having the acupuncture.
So I was taught acupuncture in 1982 when I was training as a GP at a local surgery, and there was this very tweedy English Mancunian like you, Andy, called Bill Moore.
Hey.
He'd gone off on a week's course at the Royal College of GPs, a guy called Felix Mann, the Felix Mann technique, which was basically barefoot acupuncture. And he'd come up to people and he'd have a bit of a tremor, and he'd take these needles. In those days, you had to resharpen them and then sterilize them. And you wouldn't do that now. He'd sort of go like this. Don't suppose you'd like me to give you a bit of acupuncture, would you? And they'd back away. And I thought, well, Bill, you don't sell it like that. But he taught me how to do that. Yeah, that was just incredible. I mean, acupuncture is incredible. There's no
I had it in the back of my heel, shoulders, back of my hand.
Yeah.
And each time I went, it was different areas for different things to see what was working and what wasn't. But in the end, it did work.
That got me out of trouble. I mean, I remember when I was working at I was in student health for a year. And one day there was a secretary in the university, and they brought her up, and she was they thought she had meningitis. She was sort of between two people, and she was sort of headache and vomiting. And I sort of examined her. She couldn't bear the light. And I said, I was worried she had meningitis. She said, no, it's just my migraine. So I thought, I've got absolutely nothing to treat her with. So I got her into the sick bay, which is basically a room with a bed in it. And in those days, I didn't have any acupuncture needles. We're talking about 1983. And I got a green hypodermic needle, and I shoved it in to the called GB20, a point back of the neck. And within 20 seconds, she was completely better. It was great. So,
wow.
So I drew back the curtain. Have you ever seen the Hammer House of Horror where he draws back the curtains and the light floods in? I did that. Like that. She said, I can see it's not that much. But she walked out of the room, like, she went in sort of vomiting, and all her friends were there, and they started clapping me. It was lovely. I got a nice thank you letter. That worked. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That absolutely worked. And stuff like that.
You never thought of getting Never thought of getting like a wizard's hat and a big cloak and going to work wearing that.
Listen, I mean, actually, yes. I mean, I'm very much drawn to that. I mean, it's the showmanship side of it. Medicine is a ritual. Yeah. No. I can't take myself seriously enough. I'd be more like Tommy Cooper, just like that. Like that. Probably all go wrong,
Yeah.
So Nicole, you don't know who Tommy Cooper is? He was a famous comedian who used to wear a fez, the red hat with a little tassel. Oh, he's a very good magician. But
I'll get a picture of him.
His shtick was it would always go wrong, and he'd say not like that, just like that, and then eventually he'd get it right. Just when you think he's completely incompetent, he'd do it perfectly. But he would just go up on stage, and the minute he stood up on stage, you'd start laughing. He'd just look at you, and he'd just start laughing. But it's a very, very British thing. Yeah. He's
when he North London.
Oh God, I don't know. He was out. I know he had drink problem, but he's of the same ilk as Benny Hill. That sort of. You probably know Benny Hill.
Yeah.
That's
like 70s, 80s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He died on stage. He died on stage doing the London variety, didn't
just
he?
like that.
And Jimmy Tarbuck.
Yeah.
He died on live TV.
Yeah. His best
Sunday night. He's like kid.
Yeah.
He's a London Royal variety performance, like in front of the Queen and the royal family and all that, and there's all comedians and singers.
Yeah.
But this is.
Oh yeah.
That's him.
Just look at him.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
definitely my generation.
Yeah. He's like Dick Emery and Kenny Everett and all them, isn't it? It's like that era.
Funny you should say that. I was at the there's a church went out with some friends, and we ended up around Covent Garden. There's a St Paul's Church, not St Paul's Cathedral, St Paul's Church in Covent Garden. That's the actors' church, and like Dick Emery, there's a plaque to Dick Emery there, and Roy Treese and people
Oh,
like
is
that.
there?
Yeah,
I've been
Nice.
there. I didn't see it.
Yeah,
I'll have to have a look next time I go.
yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. But he was funny. If you watch a clip of Tommy Cooper, watch the spoon jar scene. Can't beat it.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I love to watch it.
You've got to.
I
You
will
won't be disappointed.
I don't think I could be.
Well, you
after
might be. I don't know. Well,
I don't know. It looks funny.
yeah, he is. He was. Right, Ian, we've got a couple of questions for you. Is that okay?
Yeah. Far away, yeah, absolutely.
Right. So the first one is from Sober Carper, and he is asking, "Hi, Ian. Have you personally witnessed any evidence of psychic healing on physical medical conditions, or heard of any credible cases?"
The closest I've got was one of my patients who saw Stephen Turoff. I don't know if you know Stephen Turoff. He's
I've heard of the name.
Yeah, he's probably retired now. He's an interesting guy, Stephen. One of my patients went to see him, and she had an ovarian cyst, and after she saw him, the cyst went away. But the cyst could have gone away anyway. She was convinced that he healed her. One of the guys I was in circle with at Walthamstow, his migraines had been cured by Stephen Turoff. So I actually went, Stephen Turoff, I said to my patient, "Oh, I'd like to meet him." And I'd been on TV then. I was on a Channel 4 documentary about what I was doing. So they heard of me, and he said, "Oh, he's not one of those skeptical doctors. Come and see me." So I sat in with one of his sessions. And his patients absolutely believed him. But he certainly used props. This is the thing.
Right.
So if you saw him, you say, "Well, this guy's..." So he claimed, he was sort of making... He'd have like cotton ball walls, cotton ball balls in a
jar.
He put them on the abdomen. He'd move inside. He was opening them up. Then you'd hear this squishing noise. But and if you're uncharitable, you say, "Well, that's just cruel." But one thing I've learned about this, and now people say I am too credulous, is that you could argue it's a prop. That it just makes the healing more effective. I mean, I don't know. You'd have to say, "Well, I wasn't that convinced," but his patients were absolutely convinced. But then again, you can convince anybody of anything, really. I mean, we know the placebo effect works.
Yeah, I was going to say that placebo, mind over matter.
Yeah, but I mean, the person that I've read about is Arrigo. I think he's Brazilian, and there's actually he was one of these Brazilian healers, and there is film of him opening up a cyst in someone's arm. And he's called Surgeon of the Rusty Knife, and he claimed to be able to remove cataracts with rusty knives and stuff like this. And you wouldn't really believe it, but there is film of him doing it, and when it's slowed down, you can actually see what's happening. But I mean, I don't know. Like I say, I tend to keep away from the healing. I mean, I'd love healing, and I hope it works. But that's not something I really because anything can get better on its own. So whenever you see it, you think, "Yeah, that could have got better on its own." That's not going to give me on my personal journey evidence that what I'm most interested in is who we are. I mean, I'm interested in healing, obviously.
Yeah.
But what really gets my juices going is survival of the human personality after death. What are we? What's the nature of reality? And you think, "Oh, the guy's a doctor. Why wouldn't he want to do healing?" I suppose it's because it's my day job. I suppose you could say that. I want to expand what I was doing, and I suppose if I'm being honest as a doctor, what I'm most interested in is the interface between people's problems and illnesses and their life, and how it affects them physically and mentally. I mean, there's this mishmash. You've got the physical and the social. It all links together. And
mind-body connection.
Yeah, exactly. And that's you call it a liminal area, you know, where things are in between things. That's what I find most interesting. I mean, it really sort of confuses you. And, you know, if you think about it long enough, which I do, I mean, I thought I'd like to write some of my thoughts down. The trouble is it's very hard to know how to unpick it. It's a bit like the caterpillar. If it starts to think how it walks, we just not walk because it's got so many legs. Mm-hmm. And actually, you know, sometimes we can overthink these things. Sometimes you just have to sort of play with it and see where it goes. So I'm quite playful in my approach to this, actually.
Yeah, like trying different techniques and different ways around stuff.
Yeah, but when it comes to so what I'm absolutely certain of is that the using mediumship as mediums do is therapeutic. There's no doubt about it. So the way spiritualism works, I mean, it is a recognized religion in and of itself. But I noticed that there were both non-religious people going for readings to spiritualist churches and other groups from all sorts of religions. It was like a sort of bolt-on to your religious practice, because most religions don't deal with this. So when they lost someone, they go to the spiritualist. So you have Catholic spiritualists, Jewish spiritualists, Muslim spiritualists. I mean, I've seen all of them, Hindus, and a lot of them would go there, get their message, sit in circle for a while, and then be satisfied, and then move on. So for me, it's trying to work out what the nature of reality is.
Yeah. Well, that's why I did the tagline. It was only a few weeks ago that I did it. It's only took me 3 years to think of it, where the paranormal becomes normal. Because to me, paranormal is normal. It's just just offset to left, to the right, behind you, above you, wherever. And that's what it is. Because for me, paranormal is normal.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't happen all day, every day. There could go through phases of like 2-3 years where absolutely nothing happens. But it's still there. Just because I'm not experiencing it doesn't mean to say it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it may be happening. It's just that you have to be in the frame of mind to witness it. So, you know, I mean, for me, I mean, we all get it, but especially when you're going through a phase. So for me, a phase would be when there's a major life event, and often if I'm going through a high energy stress event. So there are low energy stress events where you're depressed, and then that really is, you know. But if there's something going on and you're quite anxious, but you've got a lot of nervous energy, then it happens. So there's obviously something going on with energy there. And then when that starts, what will happen is I'll start to get synchronicities occurring, which is what happened to me at the beginning. And when I'm going through phases in my life, you get these things. And for me, it'll be like media. I mean, I'll be thinking of something, and then it will come on the radio. Then my wife, she's more numbers based, so she gets she sees things like in car number plates or clocks, you know, 111, all that sort of thing. Yeah, which I tend not to get.
See, it came up again.
Sorry,
1111.
Yeah,
1111.
Yeah, you're into all that, are you? Yeah.
No, I'm not. But
no, it just happens to her.
Oh right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get a lot of the synchronicity with just normal everyday stuff, and it's just become the norm. It's not synchronicity anymore. It's just normal everyday goings on.
Yeah. The trouble is when it happens, and it's great, then I think, oh shit, how do I understand this?
Yeah.
That's
How do I deciphering it afterwards, isn't it?
Yeah. So you think, well, what does that mean? I've come to the conclusion. I call it the cosmic building site. So my conclusion is that we are not what we think we are, and that we are a small part of who we think we are, and we're a part of our souls, if you like. It's just a hypothesis. Is much larger, which exists somehow outside time, outside the time we experience. But I think there's no such thing as time. But I think that every conscious entity experiences its own sort of time. And I think that there's a larger being, you could call it God or a higher part of which we're a part. There's a sort of call it the building site, and there's John at one end of the beam, like a wooden beam, and there's a dick at the other beam, and they're trying to maneuver it into place. They say, right, move it there, mate, move it there. But imagine these are like really powerful beings. Now, as the beam moves, events are falling into place.
Yes.
And that's actually across time. So that's what's happening outside. So of course, there's a pattern to it, because why wouldn't there be? They're all connected, but we can't see the connections where we are, because we're actually in time. It's a different sort of time we experience.
Yeah. Quick question for you.
Yeah.
Just before we go for a break. Just jumping onto the Mandela effect. Have you had anything like that, or even deja vu, whilst doing the job you're doing now?
Yeah. The Mandela effect. Yeah, there's been a couple. I can't remember now. There's a couple of things which I always thought it was one thing, and it turned out I was wrong.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Did I cross into a parallel alternate universe? I don't know. I can't remember. There were a few, but I can't remember them now. They've slipped my mind. But I have had it. Yeah, deja vu. Yeah, I mean, I think deja vu is explained because I mean, you could explain that in simple terms. That we tend to tag events as being we've witnessed them before, and sometimes events get tagged wrong. I mean, I can understand how that would happen. But then maybe there's a purpose for it. I mean, the way we interpret it scientifically may not be. Why did we tag it wrong? What's it telling us? What can we learn by that?
Yeah. The way I see deja vu, it's giving you a little hint of like this has happened before. We're just like dipping you in and straight back out again. We're not giving you too much.
Yeah.
And I'd just stick with that because I don't know anything else.
Well, time is a big mystery, and that's I think the big problem with understanding anything about paranormal is understanding time. Well, actually, there's three things. So we don't understand the nature of consciousness. We really haven't got a clue, right? Science cannot explain why we feel things, and we don't. And physicists will say we don't really understand the nature of time. Okay, and they also say that time and space are the same thing. So if we don't understand the nature of time. We don't understand the nature of space. So what they're saying is we don't know who we are, when we are, or where we are. And if you have a patient who doesn't know who they are, where they are, when they are, they're confused. They've got dementia, or they're acutely confused. So I said, my premise is we're completely confused. Yeah. Then we can have some fun.
Yeah. It just messes with your head. Well, it does with me anyway. I'm not trying to work out what it all is, but just trying to wrap your head around like what you've just said, like why it is. And can't do it.
We don't know anything.
I know even less than nothing.
Well, I knew a healer, a guy called Charles Stevens. He was 94 when he died. Very erudite man, very learned. He was a Holocaust survivor, and him and his friends managed to escape from a concentration camp in the war. He was Polish, and ended up in a Soviet gulag. And he was there for years. Yeah, he came out. He was like 4 stone in weight. Anyway, he came to the UK after all and did well, and got into spiritualism. And he used to say to me, the older I get, the more I know, the less I understand. And I think that's good. But he was convinced that there was a spiritual element to life. And he was a good healer. He would heal people.
Yeah. He's very interesting.
So are we going to have a break now and then talk afterwards? Or
should we have a break now? How long do you want? 3 minutes?
3 minutes would be fine for me.
1 minute?
1 minute would be fine for me.
3?
Yeah.
Right,
3
let's
minutes.
do that then. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, just in case you don't have to rush back. Right, see you guys in 3. Get your questions in for part 2.
Okay, back in 3. All right.
And we are back. Perfect timing. Right. Should we do a couple more questions, or do you want to?
No, let's get some questions in.
Right. Yeah, we'll do questions, and then last bit we'll do about your encounters. What I was talking about off air.
Sure.
Cool. Nicole, do you want to do this one?
Yeah. Open it up.
There it is.
This one is from Agarty. Do you ever want to give a patient a message you're picking up?
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what I do. Yeah, I mean it's exactly what I do. that's the so yes.
Do you ever do you get their permission before you give them
yeah, I guess so. The first time it started was with Lucy. Again, she doesn't like me using her name. So she came into my room, and this would be the 6th of December 2004. So she came into my room. She was younger than me then. I'm now 68. She was 66. And she burst into tears and said, "You've got to help me. I'm so depressed." So I took a history from her. Couldn't find any cause for depression. I'd known Lucy for a long time. She's normally a bright, bubbly lady, very cheerful, but she was unutterably. I mean, she was just so depressed. It was unbelievable. And I did not know. She said, "You've got to help me." So I just printed out a prescription for an antidepressant. As it came out of my printer, I felt a blow to the back of my neck and I actually heard a voice saying, "Ask her about her father." And with that, I could see the misty outline of a man over her left shoulder who I could describe. And I just said, "Lucy, tell me about your dad." And she stopped crying. And she said, "He was killed 38 years ago on the 8th of December. Do you think that's why I'm depressed?" Well, I mean, that obviously could be a cause. You know, it was our anniversary. I said, why do you ask? I said, "Lucy, I think I can see him over your left shoulder." I described the man, and she sort of grabbed my arm and said, "Yeah." So she said, "Thank you so much for telling me this." And she told me the story that she's Irish and she was in service in Manchester, and in your part of the world, and she was coming back on the boat to see her father, who was in rural Ireland. At the time, the Troubles were kicking off in Ireland, and although she was Catholic, he was speaking out against the IRA, and she thinks the IRA killed him. And she'd always felt, she had never had any proof, but she thought that's what happened. Anyway, she always felt that that her dad was around her, but whenever she said this, her family said, "Well, we're Catholic, we're not meant to believe that." So when I described what was over her left shoulder, first of all, she immediately realized why she was depressed. And then, so she told me the story, and she said, "Well, now I know why I'm depressed. I don't need your silly tablets, doctor." And with that, she left my room. I thought, that's it, my career's over. This was the first message I've ever given to anyone, and I just had to give it because I heard this voice. It just came out, and she went outside and then had a chat with Carol, my receptionist, and Tom said what I said. And I thought that's my career's over. Anyway, 4 weeks later, she comes into my room, all smiles. I said, "Hello, Lucy, what's wrong?" She said, "Nothing." So I said, "Well, why are you here then?" And she sort of smiled and sort of sat down. I said, "Come to tell you a story." She said, "Well, 2 weeks after I saw you, doctor, I was at my Irish social club, and there's this creepy geezer who's got the second sight, which is what the Irish call the sixth sense." He was he said, "Everyone thinks he's creepy." And he was tugging at my coattails, saying, "Lucy, Lucy, Lucy, I've got this message for you. Come into this room where it's quiet. I'll give you the message." He said, "I'm not coming into any room, into a room on my own with you. If you've got something to tell me right now, right here in the hall." He said, "Do you know there's a fellow over your left shoulder? I think he's your father." He said, "Of course I did. My GP told me that 2 weeks ago." And he said, "You know what, Doc? That sure took the wind out of his sails." So, I mean, she really came to tell me he'd seen exactly what I saw. And I was sort of taken aback. So that's the first time I've gave it to a patient. And after that, word got around. So, and because it really, really helped her, I thought, hey, this has really, really helped her. It was really quite interesting. Her sister lived in Spain at the time, and her sister had lost her husband. Told this
Right.
to her sister. Then her sister, she said her sister was in bed one night, rolled over and realised that her husband was next to her in spectral form, gave her a cuddle and said goodbye to her. And so obviously telling the story had done something in the family that had opened up their perceptions or made them more open to this sort of thing. And to the point where the sister came over to see Lucy one day, and Lucy brought her into consultation to meet me. So, and then I gave a talk there's a local thing in Enfield, the Enfield Natural Health thing run by another GP who talks about these sort of things. And Lucy and her family came there, and her son came up to me and shook my hand and said, "You don't know how much you changed Mum's life with that message." I mean, really, really amazing, really deeply.
Wow.
So, and that's when I began to realize this stuff is really deeply, deeply therapeutic, but not for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got patients with Jehovah's Witnesses, and they don't want anything to do with this, but they're very respectful. I mean, saying, okay, fine, it's not for you. They don't believe in that at all. They have a very physicalist interpretation of the universe, but don't have any problem. I mean, I've got all sorts of religions in my practice, and they all what I do, and I don't have any problem at all. As I say, people think it's quite normal, and they can't understand why I'm a bit skeptical. Which is,
have you found that it's changed now that you do a lot of the telemedicine? Are you still able to do it over?
Well, that's interesting. No. So one of the problems with mediumship is cold reading, because as a medium you learn to be sensitive. So you're not just going to be sensitive to the psychic stuff. You're going to be sensitive to everything: body language, the way they look at you, that you immediately, their age. You've already got preconceptions, and that obviously comes into any mediumship thing, and you've got to be aware of that. There's always a necessary bit of cold reading. You can't get away from it. The only way you can do that is if you do it not knowing who you're giving it to, completely under blind conditions. And quite frankly, it's pretty sterile to do that. But if you limit the amount of information you get, that can be quite useful, because one of the problems with cold reading is it can send you along a path that you shouldn't really go along. For instance, you might think, well, that person's in their 60s, so they haven't got this person there. Their parents are probably dead. And you start making these assumptions. Whereas if you don't see them, or you don't see their reactions as well as you normally would, you've got a connection with them, but it's not tainted by your preconceptions. So when COVID hit off and they sent me home because of my age, at the time they thought it was more for men over the age of 60 who are at risk of this. So they sent me work. And at the time, I'd been seeing a woman called Caroline. Now, her mother had died, and I was giving her some stuff which she really could take. In fact, I got a lot for Caroline, and so I phoned her up, and because I had a consultation book, she said, "Well, it's a shame we can't do this now, because now you're in the surgery." I said, "Well, my mediumship development circle's moved over to Zoom. Maybe we could do it using Zoom." So I sent her a Zoom link, and I got the most amazing stuff for her over Zoom. And the nice thing was, she was at home, so she'd been going through her mum's things. And this is something that actually we both ended up crying over. It was very moving. So I said, "Okay, Caroline, I've got this. I'm seeing this thing. It looks like a very long charm bracelet." And I said, "I think it's a charm necklace." I mean, I didn't know what. I said, "Is there such a thing?" She said, "Yeah, Mum's got one." I said, "Really? I've never heard of them." But it looked like a very long, chunky charm bracelet. You wear like a necklace. So she said, and then I said, "Well, I'm seeing a handbag or a purse or something." She said, "Well, Mum's got a handbag." So I said, "Okay, well, I don't know what that is." She said, "I've got the charm necklace. I'll get it out." So since we were at home, she could get it. So she went into her room, got it out, showed it to me. I said, "I think the handbag or the purse is one of the charms." She said, "Yeah, that there is one. It was a silver purse, I think it was." I said, "I think your mum wants you to open it. I think there's something inside it." So is it open? She has a little classmate. So
Yeah.
she opened it up. I said, what's in it? She said, there was a little silver, like an envelope in it. I said, well, she wants you to read what's on it. And on it, it said, I
Yeah.
love you.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh.
Absolutely. I think I teared up. She started crying. That was amazing. And the other thing I got with her was, this is really interesting. So I got her husband's uncle, and I knew I was with her husband's uncle, and I kept on seeing in my mind's eye tennis. I don't hear much, so I got a very good vision imagination. So I was seeing these people playing tennis. And I said, "Oh, was his uncle into tennis?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, I've got Wimbledon and tennis." No, tennis balls going over the net. Then I suddenly realised it was a pun, because I like puns. It was a visual pun. I said, "Was his name Dennis?" Yes, that was his name. Dennis. So that's interesting. So this is another interesting thing that I think about. That as it's a communications problem. How do you communicate someone who can't hear, who likes puns, who's a bit jokey? You know, I like these sort of joke type things, visual and sort of word jokes. And I think so. When you're starting to do mediumship, you have to understand how you interact with your own mind, and spiritually would say how you interact with your guides.
Yeah.
And often clairaudience is not. I mean, most people are more visual than clairaudient. You do have an inner voice, but my imagination is better than my inner voice. You know, my actually imaging faculty. So as a medium, you train. You know, in Spiritualist Church. I don't know if you've ever been. Have you ever trained as a medium? Anyone?
No.
So in the circle, you'll sit in the circle, and one of the things is you meditate to open up and invite your guides to come through, and then you do a form of meditation. So there's many different sorts of meditation, but spiritualist meditation for trainee mediums is they call going on a journey, and this is guided imagery, which stimulates your imagination. The idea is to use your imagination to contact the other side, but also for you to get to learn how to use your imaging faculty. So we used to image imagination as being sort of fantasy, but you actually use it as a faculty to receive information. And it's quite interesting. Some people, they don't see anything. They say, I don't know what you mean. So some people don't have any inner eye, but they may feel things or they may hear things.
Yeah, that's me. I feel and hear. I've seen stuff, don't get me wrong, but not in a mediumship, like clairvoyant way. It's more because I use dowsing rods and pendulums and contact my spirit guides more with the pendulum than the rods. But even when I'm out doing an investigation, I get the gut feeling, whether it's good, bad, bit in between. I get like whispers in my ear and tapping on the shoulder and all that kind of stuff. So I get all that. I just don't physically see anything.
Yeah, I mean, dowsing is great. I mean, I've done some dowsing. I mean, I did when we got our house when it was new, so the garden hadn't been laid. And one afternoon I was bored. My wife wasn't very well. She was in bed with a headache, and I thought, I'll try some dowsing. I just had this urge to douse. I wonder what was under the ground, because I've been always interested in this sort of thing, really. So I got some coat hangers, bent rods, and didn't get much. And eventually I ended up actually walking across the garden with my arms out like that. My neighbours just thought I was mad.
It does the trick now, but it works.
To dig, and I absolutely came across a cache of old. I've got it in the hall actually in the display cabinet. Old jars, old medicine bottles, old Bovril bottles. It was the house that we live in was built on an old Victorian house, and this was the midden where they threw out all the trash. And a lot of the bottles and old glass and that Edwardian paperweight, amazing stuff. And I somehow knew it was going to be there. So interesting.
I love dowsing.
Stuff dowsing.
Yeah. I need to do more of it. I keep saying I'm going to do it, and when I go out, I take, depending what type of investigation I'm going to do, I take different bits of equipment. And I always take the dowsing rods, but I forget I got them. So I don't end up doing it.
You got to get the little ones like this that like are pen size. You can just shove them in your pocket.
Yeah.
They just pop out.
Oh, that's clever. Oh, I like that. That is nice.
You can bring these
Ah.
everywhere with you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they look like pens.
Yeah. They have a
Yeah,
thing on-
I've got 2 copper or brass, and you just pull out on a sleeve, and then so when you're holding them like that,
Mhm.
obviously it's in a sleeve, so you don't have any control of which way it goes.
Yeah, these are like this part here like rotates freely, so it can still.
That's nice. Very neat.
Highly recommended.
Mm.
Yeah,
Because I would never
I
bring
got
big
mine.
ones anywhere.
No, I in a little velvet purse. I got them on Amazon, about £12. So definitely worth the money.
Yeah.
Oh, they will be when I start using them proper.
All right. Let's see what other.
Is there one
Throw up
more?
another one? Yeah.
Yep. So I'm just looking. Here we go. So this is from Darren, our baby with a laser. Ian, I was bought a. Love it when they put words in they can't say. I was bought a Shakti mat, bed of nails for my birthday. Do you know anything about them? It's some form of acupressure, I think.
Yeah. It can be quite useful. I mean, yeah, it depends. Depends how sharp they are. But yeah, I mean,
don't sharpen them up.
I haven't tried them, but I've had patients who've used them to great effect. Yeah. I mean, they can be very helpful if you've got a back problem. What I like particularly are back stretchers, though, which are like curved. I mean, I've got some wooden ones, which are like curved. You lie on them, and they extend your spine, and then you put it on your neck. They're very good. Yeah, but this physical stuff can be very useful. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Next one is from. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with the chat. Got a couple of trolls in trying to be funny. And
All right, I'll get the question. You get the chat.
Yep.
Next one is from Fred Flintstone. Hi, Ian. Do you think your gift confirms the existence of God or a creator? Deep questions.
It's a deep question, and I know where you're coming from. And I don't come from a religious perspective. In fact, my family were ardent atheists. So, and I was considered to be very odd because I always felt that there was something more to to life than met the eye. And I remember this guy used to come in, speak to my parents, and my parents were very political, very left-wing political. And this guy was trying to teach. He was a Pentecostal guy, an Afro-Caribbean guy, a nice guy, and he was trying to explain to them about his view of God. I remember him saying, "I'm God, you're God, we're all God." I remember thinking, yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And my parents just started, when he left, they were very polite. They started laughing at he thinks he's God. And I was about 6 or 7 at the time. And I remember thinking, Mum and Dad, you just don't get it, do you? I knew what he was getting at. And I was like a kid.
Yeah.
So I've always felt in my heart that there is something. Now, whatever it is, it's you say it's the God of one's understanding or the God that one doesn't understand, I suppose. I don't know if it confirms. I don't know, but I would certainly say that if it's just a physical world and this is not real, then I don't know. But if there's these other things, it leads open to the possibility that we are part of something greater. And yes, I think it certainly leads you to that conclusion. It keeps the door open. And not only that, when you get all this stuff happen and you start to give messages and you start to examine the synchronicities in your own life, you realize that there is a pattern to your own life that is not random. And I often think, and one of the things I say to my patients is, look, I'm not religious, but what do you think your mission is in life? And what do you mean? I said, well, let's play a game. In the film The Bourne Identity, Jason Bourne loses his memory and he doesn't know what his mission is. He has to work out who he is and what his mission is. And I said, I sometimes think that we come here and our mind's memory is white, and we have to work out, it's an initiative test. We have to work out who we are and why we've come here. So when you start saying something, you say, oh yeah, that's an idea. So in the way you find out what your mission is, look at the themes in your life. and then work out what life has been trying to teach you. So, I mean, that is sort of spiritual. I wouldn't say religious. That's sort of undifferentiated spiritual view of things. So if my view of God would be what spiritualists call a universal intelligence, I would say, I'd like to believe that.
It's all just different ways of saying the same thing, really, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Everyone has their own belief as to whether it's God or something else. It's down to that.
Yeah.
It's the God of your understanding, isn't it?
Yeah. The same thing, really, with magic, prayers, energy work. It's all kind of in the same realm.
Yeah.
Right.
But the only thing I would say is when you get into this, it helps to have a framework.
Yes.
Because it is very destabilizing. So for me, this framework tend to be spiritualist, and I can see now why. Because the guy who taught me, a guy called Keith Hudson, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago, he was an antiquarian. He collected old spiritualist books, and he had an enormous collection. He had a bookshop in Hoe Street Market, which is the largest street market in Europe, in Walthamstow. And he had a lot of books, and I used to read his books. He had some classic books, like people like Arthur Finley and people like that. And you realize that these guys were not stupid, and they had a lot of evidence. So for me, getting into spiritual, and again, it was evidence-based. You had to give a message, and it was not like, you're either right or you're wrong, or maybe, but so for something coming from my background, I found that very helpful. Other people get it into in other ways. I mean, Reiki or whatever, depends on how your brain is structured.
So quick question, why do you think we've gone backwards with spirituality? Is it just too much tech or modernization, and we've just forgot about what's going on?
I think what you're referring to is the idea that the heyday of spiritualism is over. You used to have a lot of physical stuff and everything. Yeah, is that what you mean? Yeah, because I mean, we've all read these stories how in the 1920s, 30s, 40s there was all this stuff. Well, there's a couple of things. What people had a lot more time on their hands, didn't they? In those days, they had to make their own entertainment, and they used to work a lot. I mean, their working days were 12-hour days, and maybe working on a Saturday. So I mean, they used to work hard, but they didn't have like all the distractions we have. And if you're sat in the quiet, maybe with a gaslight, or something, and there's no noise, no TVs going on, something like that, and you've got your friends round in convivial company, maybe having a sing-along, because, why not?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe that raises the energy. Maybe that was more conducive. Some people say it's electromagnetic pollution. Well, I don't know. Other people say that that's our poor diet. Some people say it's just that there's a heavier atmosphere around the world. There's more stuff going on. Although, I mean, bearing in mind that there were 2 really violent world wars, I mean, you can't get heavier than that. But maybe all the death and destruction from the wars made people turn to it a bit more.
Yeah, it's like. So I was just going to say, Paranormal Pixies put in the chat, not backwards, it's renewing. But what I meant was we kind of like came away from it and was doing all modern day stuff to simplify it. But we're kind of going back into it. It just seemed to be a big gap of nothing, or very little, I should say.
Well, I think, I don't know, see, I grew up in the 60s when it all, New Age stuff kicked off.
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on there, but it wasn't sort of traditional spiritual. I mean, the spiritualism was still going on. And there's some good spiritualists around. There was classic. I mean, Leslie Flint, for instance. You heard of Leslie Flint?
No, sorry.
So Leslie Flint, he wrote. He's amazing. You can see his stuff on the web. So Leslie Flint came from a very impoverished St Albans family, and he loved going to the cinema. And he'd go into cinema whenever he can. Trouble is, he'd get kicked out because people would say, "You're talking to yourself," and he never knew what was going on. And eventually, he ended up going to a spiritualist church. And they realized he was an independent, direct voice medium. So what would happen is he'd go into a darkened room, and then immediately voices would start speaking around him. Now, he wouldn't be speaking through his vocal cords, but voices, he was a physical medium. And what would happen is they would create an ectoplasmic voice box in midair that the spirit would speak through. So what I mean by independent direct voice, so I don't know if you've ever seen at spiritualist circles, they have what's called a trumpet, like a megaphone.
Yes.
You know, the old-fashioned
Yeah, yeah,
megaphone, a cone, like a dunce's hat. So that's used to amplify spirit voices. So in physical mediumship circles, the idea would be is that it would levitate and that a spirit would speak at the narrow end, and it would be amplified as it comes out at the wide end. That's called the direct voice. So that's not coming from the medium. The medium might be in a trance or may not be in a trance, but the voice was coming out there. And I know people who've witnessed that. But Leslie Flint was an independent direct voice medium, which meant he didn't need the trumpet, as it was called, the spiritualist cone. So voices would just come out. They were strong enough to be heard, and he would have a conversation with them. They could put sort of water in his mouth and seal him up, and he'd still have the water. So he was definitely not him. And to boot, they recorded most of his seances, and there's an archive called. If you type in Leslie Flint, you'll come to Leslie Flint, and you can.
Brian's just put it up. He's just put Leslie's website as most of his recordings.
Yeah, and they are
absolutely amazing.
So so the guy Keith Hudson, who I knew, because Keith was 78 when he died about 4 years ago, and he'd actually sat with Leslie Flint on 2 occasions, and he said he's absolutely certain that his old foreman from an electrical factory that he worked in called Dave came through, and he said to him, he said, "Hello, Huddy." He called him Huddy, like Hudson, and he said it was him, and he had a conversation with him. So, I mean, stuff like that was going on. And the other thing that I don't know if you've heard of the skull experiment.
Yes.
Have you, Nicole?
No.
Oh, wow. You want to look this up. I
know. You will have, Nicole. You will. Yeah.
This was
maybe I should know.
In Norfolk, in England, an area called Diss. There was so Skull is a place in Norfolk, but the place there was a farmhouse with a cellar in a place called Diss, Diss, which is like a small village, and these two, the Foy, what was his name? Robin and I think Sharon Foy, I think it was. The Foys were interested in mediumship, and they were led by the spirit world to form a circle in this cellar, and they were given certain protocols. They were working not with ectoplasm, but what they called a solid form of light. And they got the most amazing phenomena. I mean, too much to talk about here. But I know a couple of people who were in that circle. And these are not credulous people. These are solid, professional people. You could take what they say to the bank, husband and wife. And what they witnessed was unbelievable. I mean, although they were in the dark, these spirit lights would appear and it would illuminate the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the woman, I mean, she had these olive-sized spirit lights whirling through the room, and they would go through her body. She could feel them fizzing through her and coming out. The guy, my friend, he tells the story of a spirit child that appeared and he hugged him. But when he hugged the child, he realized that the face stopped right there. There's nothing there, and he recoiled. And the child laughed and said, "Oh, sorry, mister, I'll bring all of myself through the next time." There's a famous thing, you can hear Robin Foy talk about this on YouTube, that when a little UFO appeared, like a mini classic UFO, they were there when that happened. Yeah, they saw it. They witnessed it. It was absolutely fascinating, and it's high strangeness because it had to be shut down because their guides said that there was and the guides came from what they called the time stream, and they said, "We are from the time stream, and we're shutting it down because there's another group at the end of the 21st century, and it's interfering with this one, and it's dangerous, so we're shutting it down."
Oh,
yeah. There was
like 2 timelines overlapping.
Yeah, but there's more to it. There's more to this sort of darker stuff. Apparently, I think one of the reasons why they left the country and moved to Spain was because they realized that they were being bugged. that the Ministry of
Right.
Defence was interested in what they were doing and that sort of stuff. There was a lot of shady stuff going on. So then it gets dark and conspiratorial then, which is, I mean, this stuff often you can do. I keep away from that. I just want to give nice messages, but I mean, you know, you can go down some pretty dark rabbit holes.
Definitely, yeah. But I'm just going to say the guests that we've got coming on Sunday, Nicole knows him. It's Ron, Iacovetti, and Lardes, and then the Rothmans. They do a thing called Staticom, which is real-time spirit communication using white noise, but they've disconnected the transmission going in, and no way I can explain it. They've elongated the white noise so it's not on a repeat, and they're getting direct. They're having intellectual or intelligent conversations with whatever it is that's contacting them. But if you speak to Ron, Nicole, he actually mentions skull experiment, because that's kind of where they got their idea from, but with sound and not vision. I remember him talking about it last time.
The problem with some of this is so when you do spiritualism, you are pretty grounded. I mean, you make contact with your guides. It's quite bound in as much as you are trying to receive uplifting messages from the other side for evidence. That's pretty linked. Once you start doing like Ouija or this other stuff, you're then gonna come across the trickster element to the paranormal.
Yes,
which definitely exists. And there's no doubt about that. There's a guy who wrote a book called The Trickster and the Paranormal, which is famous, but I can't remember his name now. But this is inevitable. And the one thing this stuff is, just when you think you've got it, it will wrong foot you. It's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And I know a couple of guys, I think who think that there's a deceptive element to this. And they find it quite frightening. But I sometimes think maybe it's the energy that you might bring to it. So if you're naturally suspicious, then you know it might resonate with those. And if you go into it like I do with the intention to heal, I mean, I think with all this, it's all about intention. If you're going into it with the intention to help humanity, and with an avowed intention, having contacted guides who spiritually say are there to protect you, then to that extent, I mean, that's positive. Things can always go wrong, obviously. But the idea is to surround yourself with light and just be open to the highest level of beings. There's no doubt about it. It's bound to be, if it's real, there's an ecology out there. And there's all different beings, not all of them nice, you know. So I think one has to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We had a couple more questions to get through.
Yeah.
Did you have another thing on that topic before we get off of it?
No, I was just going to say, I started doing meditation probably about 3-4 months ago. And I usually do it just before I do the show, do like 30 minutes to an hour. And I won't bore you. I'd sit in the chair and listen to music. But I get into the right frame of mind of what's going on and just forget everything that's gone on during the day and what's going on around me. But even now, when I get up at stupid o'clock in the morning to go to work, I'm waking up in a good mood. I'm not anxious. I'm not annoyed. I'm not angry or anything like that. I get annoyed throughout the day because of the job of doing idiots on the road and that kind of stuff. But it only lasts for that moment. Then after that, and I've not really been in a bad mood. Well, the missus wouldn't say that, but I've not been in a bad mood for months. I just happier, smiling a lot. I don't feel like you were saying before about in surgery when people go in, like get off the chest and that, and they feel better for doing it. And that's how I feel. I'm not all the aches and pains and everything. I still get them because I'm getting old, but they're not as severe as what they was at the beginning. So that's working. That's working for me. And I've tried different ways of doing it, but I found a way that works for me. And that's it. So I recommend everyone trying it.
The thing that works for me is to knock myself out in the gym. So I got as you get older, I've got to work out another way. I'm not very good at meditating. I mean, I'm the guy who used to hypnotize people and teach this stuff. But it's I find it very hard to do myself. It's very hard to stop thinking. I mean, it's great, but that's why I like doing it in a group with other people, because you know, when you're with other people, the energy, you've got the combined energy, and it's somehow deep.
Yeah, I've learned to just shut down like that, just clear my mind, nothing straight away. And it's took a long time to do it, but I do play badminton a couple of times a week. Probably do anything between 2 and 5, 7 hours a week. Not all in one go. I wouldn't be here now. But that's the main exercise that we do. And because we enjoy it and we have a laugh doing it, it's different again. So, and it just works.
You got any other questions that you want me to?
We got a couple. Do you have time for a few more?
Yeah, I've got time, more time in the world. Yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
This one's, from
That's right.
Sober Carper. Hi, Ian. Have you had any negative situations happen after offering spiritual help, like people reporting you or saying you have lost it?
No, although I think sometimes I think I've lost it. I tell my patients I think I've lost it. Today, no. The only negative report I had. Did I say this on air? I said it before. Was I had a lady come to see me. I think I told you this one, Andy, didn't I? It was before we were on.
Oh, you said it before.
Yes.
The one who complained that you didn't, right?
Yeah. So I had a complaint from her. She came to see me with a sore knee, and I diagnosed her knee and gave her some Voltarol gel to rub in, and sent her away. And then she promptly complained to my practice manager, and the complaint was, my father-in-law died 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Rubenstein didn't give me a message. She just thought that was part of the service. So that is a true story. That is a true story. The only other complaint I had was I gave a lecture at the Enfield Natural Health Centre, which is run by a colleague of mine who's in practice, Dr. Tim Ridge, and a psychologist has seen the flyer that I was a GP interested in mediumship, and she complained to the GMC that GPs shouldn't be she hadn't even been to my lecture, knew nothing about me, and complained that doctors shouldn't be involved in this. And in fact, Tim didn't tell me because it was Christmas. He said, I didn't want to spoil your Christmas. But I got a letter from the GMC said, we looked into this. There's no case to answer. No, I haven't. In fact, a few years ago, I was, my other interest is medical computing. And I developed this system, which I got a grant for, and was working with a Transforming Cancer Services team in London. And it's all very boring, but I devised what they call the 2-week wait forms. These are the forms that GPs fill out when they think patient needs to be investigated for cancer. So I designed the forms. They've been redesigned now. They don't use them anymore. But for about 8 years, they were using my forms. So I was working with all these high-level docs. I mean, like professors and people like that. I remember there was an office party once. I mean, for most of my career, I've sat in my surgery in Enfield, seeing my patients, mixing with my local colleague, and that is it. That's my. But I suddenly started mixing with all these people at high-level medical things in London, and at the time my book was coming out, and I remember I was at this office party, and this professor of child kidney medicine in one of the London teachers, she came up to me, sat down, and said, "Now tell me about your book, Ian. I'm really interested in this stuff." And a lot of doctors, and I would talk about it. I mean, I was not frightened to talk about this. I had such weird experiences that I ought to talk about them because basically I was privileged to have these experiences. So I was talking about them on various medical forums, and I remember I got into one flame war, on Doctors Net UK, and it was you get these flame wars. Someone says something and somebody else. It was 92 messages deep before someone said, "Leave him alone, Dave. He's not worth it." I remember this guy called J.S. Hopkins. He said, I remember saying, "You better be careful, Ian, because if the Daily Mail finds out about this, they'll make mincemeat of you." And what he didn't know was that I'd already had a centre page spread in the Mail on Sunday. That Angela Levin had come and interviewed me because she was friends with Doris Stokes, and she'd seen, and she came and they did a really nice spread on me. Actually, the problem was that was before my book was published. Everything was done ass backwards.
Ah,
That would have been great publicity for the book, but that was like a year
you
before
need
my
to
book.
go back and
Yeah. So
get them to do it again.
So I thought, yeah, I was in the Daily Mail, and they were quite kind. So touch wood, no, not so far. Yeah. So like I said, it's professional ice skating, on thin ice professionally, and you've got to be careful. I mean, I would lie in bed at night thinking, and really, I mean, I had 2 young children, boys,
Yeah.
and I was at the height of my career, and I'm thinking, why are you doing this? Because I'm not brave. I'm not physically brave, but actually professionally it was quite brave. But I felt such weird stuff had been happening to me, and it was so useful. It was a bit like the guy in the 1950B movie saying, they're here, you know, they're here.
Yeah.
Point, watch the skies, they're here. No one listens, you know. It was that sort of manic thing. I was in space cadet mode, basically. Yeah.
But did it, even though you didn't really understand what was going on, did it make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened? So have we got time to tell you my origin story?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
What happened was, I had a very difficult family situation. I mean, I've talked about this on other YouTube channels. You can hear them. I've told this story millions of times. I actually fell out with my mum and dad and my sister. And it got very bad. And it was because we had a family problem. I come from a large family. Well, I had a sister, but my mother was one of 5 children. So I had lots of cousins. And there was always like 2 children in each family, and the same pattern had arrived that had occurred in each family, that the older child had been sort of fallen out with the parents and sort of been cast out, and the younger child was kept in close reign. I realized that this was a family pathology. I mean, as a GP, this is what's in my stock in trade, and so I interviewed my cousins and my uncles and aunts, and I realized that the problem was actually down to probably my mother's grandfather, who I'd never met. And he was a baker in the East End of London.
Right.
And he had a couple of shops, but he had the unfortunate habit of gambling. So at the end of the week, he'd sort of put his money, his hand in the till and blow all the savings. So consequently, that caused problems which had rippled down the generations. And I realized what was going on. So having fallen out with mum and dad, feeling really sort of miserable, what happened was this guy who I knew, a guy called Keith Bishop, patient, now a good friend of mine. So I'd known him since I joined my practice in 1984. And at the time, he was working for the BBC, and he'd been promoted to a very high level. He started off, his dad was an upholsterer. He'd upholstered the Mastermind. Do you remember Mastermind?
Oh, yeah, the black chair.
He actually upholstered.
You're getting
the job for BBC World Service Radio, and he had a radio show, and then he was a nice guy, and he got promoted, and he was then working as a sort of gopher, general factotum for the control of the BBC, and he had a pocket book of names, and eventually he set up his own PR firm. And I sort of spent some time speaking with him about this over the years, because we were both working class kids who made good, and we both felt out of, like fish out of water. We both had anxieties. So, I mean, I used to speak to him about this. Anyway, so I'd known him quite well, and he came into my room one day. It was the last patient in my morning surgery. By the way, surgery is what we call an office clinical session in the UK. So my morning surgery. It's not where you're operating, but where you're seeing patients. So it's my last booked patient for the morning. And my plan was to do some home visit, then go for a swim, and then come back and do my afternoon surgery. And Keith was the last patient, but he was a bit late. But he often is late because he's a bit lovey. He's a bit of a schmoozer, and he tells these stories. He's a big guy. He projects his personality, but he's a bit unreliable. He's in that sort of feel. Anyway, he was late. I thought he's not going to turn up, and I sort of tried to get up out of my chair and got pushed back down. Tried again, and something made me sit down. Then my phone rang, and it was his PA. It was my receptionist saying, "Oh, Mr. Bishop's PA's phone is just at the local station. It'll be 5 minutes. Would you mind waiting?" I said, "Yeah, but I can't wait all day." Anyway, he came into my room. He'd run to the surgery, and had to take his blood pressure. I knew it wasn't going to be quick. And he started telling me his stories. Like, guess who I met? You know, I'm looking after this person. He'd know quite a few page 3 girls in The Sun and those sort of things.
Yeah, yeah.
He'd look up, do their PR and stuff. Then he looked at me and said, I'm terribly sorry, Doc, I've got this man here. He's the grandfather you never met and he wants to speak to you. And I thought, what? I said, what? I said, are you telling me you hear spirits? And he said, yeah. I said, how come you never told me this before? He said, well, it's not the sort of thing you tell your doctor. You think you're mad. And I'm thinking, absolutely, you know. So I thought, I have to get admitted to a psychiatric unit, and that would really screw up my day. I wouldn't get my swimming. But because he said it was the grandfather I'd never met, and that's the person I'd been thinking about, I said, okay, Keith, give me what you got. And he sort of didn't go into a trance, but looked distracted. And he said, look, I'm going to tell you what he's saying to me, but if he says anything, it's not me, it's him, so don't be upset. And he started telling me everything that was going on in my life. I mean, absolutely everything. There's no way Keith could have known that. I mean, I knew him, but he didn't know anything about my personal life. I mean, he does now because we're mates, but we didn't at the time. And he sort of came around and said, what was that? And I said, after I picked my jaw up off the floor, I said, that was amazing. And he said, my spirit guide, it says, William, my spirit guide told me you should be doing this. I said, doing what? He said, listening to spirit. I said, well, who's William? He said, he used to be my boss at the BBC. When he died, he became my spirit guide. I used to think this is crazy. He said, he said, you should be doing this, listening to spirit. I said, what spirit? What do you mean listening to spirit? I don't know what that meant. You mean spirits? Spirit? What is listening to spirit? What does that mean? He said, you should be doing this. I said, he said, you're like a man on the edge of a cliff. Don't be afraid to take a leap of faith off that cliff. They'll catch you. And with that, he left my room. And from that point on, I mean, I thought this is bonkers. And then weird stuff started happening to me and my wife. Not like things floating in the air, but odd coincidences, like meeting people who would give me a message saying, you should be doing this. Going to a party, being confronted by someone who grew up in a haunted house, and then meeting someone else who was a spiritual healer. And then when I asked how come I'm coming across it, they said, well, they obviously want to work with you, you know, and stuff like that. But what I haven't told you is before that, when I was 19, I actually witnessed what spiritualists called transfiguration. So are you aware what transfiguration is?
Yes.
So transfiguration, exactly. So transfiguration mediumship, the mechanics are, it is said, that an ectoplasmic mask is formed over the physical medium, and then the spirit impresses their features into it. And that's the theory of how it works. But what you actually get is you see someone else's face superimposed on someone else. And that can be to a greater lesser extent. Now, a lot of the stuff that is claimed to be transfiguration mediumship, I'm not convinced with. I mean, if you look at anything long enough, it starts to wobble. But I was 19, first year at medical school, summer 1974. I was really into science. I just got my A levels. I was medical school. They were still, I think they've just about finished the moon landings. So I was really, really he opened the door for me. Absolutely, Brian. I was really into science. So I went to Nottingham. My friend Nick did physics at Leicester. And I used to knock about with Nick's friends because I used to drive over there, and he ran a disco. And his girlfriend Felicity was staying down with him in London. Parents had gone away, so they were together. And me and my sister went round to his house, and we were speaking. It was about 11, 12 o'clock at night, full electric light, and I'm sitting opposite Nick and Felicity. And Felicity she was a nice looking girl with long dark hair, dark complexion, brown eyes. Then all of a sudden, there was this blonde-haired Snow Queen looking at me. Oh. And I got this, and now we'd call it a download, but I bring to your attention that term didn't exist in 1974, right? Now, and so it was like this instant information in my mind, which was, mark this, know there's more to life than meets the eye. One day you will understand. It was in my mind instantly. Like someone had put a pulse in my mind, then unwrapped it. Yeah. And this This face was a blonde-haired snow queen. So she had a fringe, what you call bangs.
Straight cut.
Bangs, yeah. Hair down to her shoulders, piercing blue eyes. I mean, she looked like Galadriel out of Lord of the Rings, that sort of beauty, neither old nor young, but beautiful, imperious, stern, not unkind, right? Looking at me, high cheekbones. But the most interesting, well, it was all interesting, but striking was her lips. They were distorted and like with white frosted lipstick on, but they hadn't formed properly. And I just, what? Like that. And at the same moment, my sister, she was only 15 at the time, started screaming at the top of her voice, "My God, can you see those lips?" Because she saw the profile. I was sitting opposite them, but she was at the side. And she was absolutely terrified. And I turned around to my sister and said, "What, you've seen it too?" And looked back, and Felicity was back to normal. Now, Nick and Felicity didn't know what had happened. But I just started crying. It was overwhelming. It was like, have you ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind when the light comes out? It was like, they go, like, it was like that. That sort of being hit by this light and this information. Wow, what was that? But my sister was horrified. She was terrified by it. And Nick and Felicity thought we'd gone mad. So we jumped into my dad's car and we knocked my parents up. They were like 2 o'clock in the morning. They said, "Well, no, take them back home, you stupid children, come to bed." So the next day I phoned all my friends. And my mate Steve, who was a school friend of mine, he said, "Well, I don't know what it was, but my neighbour is a medium. And this is a guy called Keith Hudson." And that's when I first met Keith. And he was 27 years old at the time, tall, thin, a bit gangly, a bit ungainly, a bit odd. He was losing his hair. And he said, "Oh, what you saw was a spirit guide." And he showed me his little book of spiritualist phenomena, his SNU handbook, British National Union handbook. And I thought, this is a load of rubbish. I don't believe that. But then I thought, it must have been a hallucination. But if it was a hallucination, how come my sister saw it? So I was in a bind, because either way, it was either telepathy, which isn't real, or it's spirit guides, which can't be real. And I didn't know what to make of it. And I sort of that was a story I told people at parties, or things when it came out. And occasionally I tell it to a patient. I remember once this guy, Lenny, was dying, and he said, "What do you think, Doc?" And I said, "Well, I had this experience, and I don't know what to make of it. But this guy said it was a spirit guide." And when he died, his wife said, "Oh, that story you told Lem was very comforting for him." He thought, if an intelligent person like my doctor has seen this, maybe there is something. So I hadn't seen Keith Hudson for 27, 30 years, something like that. And my wife had already heard this, and I told people this, and she was sick of. I mean, she laughs now because I've told the whole world this story now. I've written a book about it, but she was sick of me telling this story. She said, "Who are you going to tell next?" So with all this weird stuff was happening, and I'd asked one of my patients. I had this patient called Dave, and Dave. So my wife was a doctor, and Dave's wife Rhoda was a nurse. And Rhoda worked with my wife, and Dave was a science teacher who was also a shaman. And he'd done his time at the Sweat Lodge. He goes down to Stonehenge and at the solstice and bangs on the drum. But a very sensible guy. And I said, "Dave, all this weird stuff's happening to me." He said, "Ian, well, you need to join the circle." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, you get them in spiritualist church." He said, "You need to learn how to control this, because it can be quite destructive if you don't control it." So I said, "Where do you get a circle?" He said, "Well, you join a spiritualist church." I said, "Well, look, I'm a non-practicing Jew. My wife's a Hindu. We don't go to churches, places called church." He said, "Well, if spirit want to work with you, they'll find a way, right?" And that day I go home, and my wife's looking through the local paper, and she sees a small ad in the back of the Enfield Advertiser that the Beacon of Light Spiritualist Church, our local spiritualist church, says an evening of clairvoyance with the medium Keith Hudson. She said, "Ian, is that Keith you've been going about all these?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "We've got to go." So I said, "I'm not going to go." She said, "No, we've got to go." So she dragged me along, and I sat at the back of the church trying to, like that.
Hide.
Now, when I first met Keith as a student, he said, "Ian, you've got a lot of knowledge around. You don't know you know it, but we will one day." And I thought, well, that's easy. I'm a medical student. He would say that. That's not a very good message. So I'm at the back of this church, and when I was young, I had thick, dark, curly hair. and a beard.
Yeah.
Now, I've grown my beard the last couple of years, but no. So when I saw him, I was like this, no beard. I looked completely different. Like, there's no way that he didn't look much different because he lost his hair early, but there was no way he would have recognized me. I looked like I've been replaced by an old geezer, basically. I'm sat at the back of the church trying to make myself look, and he gives a message to everyone in the congregation. He gives messages at a fast clip, or used to.
Yeah.
And he comes to me and said, "Sir, you have a lot of knowledge around. You don't know you know it, but you will very soon. And they're telling me you're going to be writing a book about it." I thought, book? Yeah, what's all this about? Anyway, at the end of the service, the president of the church says, "Can anyone give Mr. Hudson a lift back to Walthamstow? He hasn't got a car." So I stood up and said, "Yeah." I went up to Keith and a bit enthusiastic. I said, "Yeah, I'll give him a lift back, but only if he comes back to my house for a cup of tea first." He jumped back because he said, as he said, "You do get a lot of strange people at spiritualist churches." And he thought I was one of them. Well, I am a bit, but still. I said, "No, Keith, it's Ian Rubenstein." He said, "Well, the doctor?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I was just talking about you the other day." So he came back to my house and he sat in this room where we are now, my kitchen, at the time, smoking his fags, because I realised that the mediums, a lot of them smoke very heavily. And we got back into, we talked about old times. We hadn't seen each other for, almost 30 years. And he said, "Look, I run the largest open circle in North London. You don't have to be a spiritualist to join. I don't consider myself to be a spiritualist. I call myself a seeker after truth." He said spiritualists can be very small-minded, and they can be. There's cattiness going on in spiritualist churches. And he said, "Come and see what you think." And that's how I got started. That's my origin story. So yeah, you see that I was sort of led along the path. But this is often the way when people go through these things. There's a trauma or crisis, and then it often opens you up, which is what happened with me. So that, but the other thing that happened to me, which I long before I even told the story about Felicity's face, was I actually had a near-death experience. I didn't put this in my book. So I didn't really link it with this, but it's only after reading around the subject I realised that it may have had something to do with it. So when I was 9, I had my tonsils removed, and I had a post-operative bleeding from my throat. So I was swallowing a lot of blood, and I losing a lot of blood and vomiting up blood. And I had to get back down under. They re-anaesthetised me, but they couldn't get hold of my parents, and they couldn't get them to sign the consent form. So a bit of a delay. I'd lost quite a bit of blood. I mean, I wasn't at death's door, but I was ill. I remember being quite ill. And as I was anaesthetised, I had what I thought was a dream. But this dream was I was me, and I was 9.
Yeah.
I wasn't lying down. I was upright. I was in a tunnel, a black tunnel with ribs, like a garden polytunnel. You know the garden tunnels?
Yeah.
They're called polytunnels, and they got like hoops in them. It was like a black garden polytunnel, big, like I was in it, and it was curving to the left. And out of my center of my abdomen, where my navel is, but big, was like this twisting structure. Like now, you'd call it like a very, very, very thick umbilical cord, like molten glass or toffee, being drawn out of me. And it was being drawn out of me. It was twisting. And it was rotating gently off down this tunnel. And now, remember, I was 9 years old. I didn't even know what an umbilical cord was. I didn't know anything about that. Yeah. So I was having this dream in this tunnel. And on the end of this stalk that was being pulled out of me, as it going to distance, was a very, very very bright, like a star, like a tiny little star, like an LED light. Didn't have LEDs in those days. And I just knew that that's what I really was. That little bright light was me. I was 9. Yeah. Remember, my parents were atheists. No instruction to any spirituality or anything like that. And then I remember the light went, the tunnel curved to the left down the bend. It was just rotating. This stalk was rotating. There's like this noise, this humming, high-pitched noise. And then as it went round the bend, I blacked out. That's all I knew, and I came round. And and I used to tell the story about how I thought I almost died, but it wasn't. So it's only when I started after I published my book, actually, because I would have put it in my book otherwise, that I realized that people who have near-death experiences often end up with being opened up psychically.
Yes.
And I wonder, so I wonder if that actually was part of it. Now, you know, I didn't die. They didn't even resuscitate me. But, you know, we now know that near-death experiences, you don't have to be dead. You can just be traumatized and it
Yeah.
can sort of
Yeah.
jump you out. So I do think that might have something to do with it. So,
Well, I
yeah.
know of, I'm going to say, including yourself, I know personally 4 people that have had similar things that are clairvoyants. So definitely something in it. That's not
Yeah.
coincidence, is it?
No. And the other, so whilst we're going back about old things, can I tell you one more story?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I said,
I actually do have to pop off, but
Sorry?
it was great. I actually do have to pop off, so I'm gonna
Oh.
pop off. I have
Okay.
kids that need me, but and I'm gonna catch this story.
Okay.
I'm gonna tune in to catch the story.
Okay. All
Cool.
right. Cheers.
See you on Sunday.
See you Sunday.
So it's just you and me now, Andy, yeah, and whoever's
It
listening.
is.
So this is I said don't use Ouija boards, and why don't we use Ouija boards? Well, they can be useful, but you're really opening yourself up to any entity that may or may not be there.
Yeah.
So generally, it's not a good idea. But having said that, I was born in 1955, so I grew up in the early 70s when everybody and his dog was using Ouija boards. It was a big thing. So the way we used to do it, me and my mates on a Saturday night, is we get Scrabble letters, put them on a circle on the dining table in my room. My parents had a glass topped dining table. So we get the Scrabble letters in a circle, A to Z,
Yeah.
and then we get an upturned glass and just all put our fingers on the glass.
Yeah.
Then we get
Yeah.
8 of us, all my mates, about, how old are we, 15, 16, and spirit of the glass, are you there? And we'd have a laugh. We'd start giggling immediately. We'd have like my Bunsen burner from my chemistry set. It was like a canister, propane gas canister, there to give sort of effect. So one day we're doing this, and it's in the summer and it's raining.
Yeah.
So we closed the windows because it was an old Victorian house. And the rain was coming in through windows. So we closed the windows. It got hot and sweaty very quickly, and we kept on getting this message, which was water in the light, danger. Water in the light, danger. And that's all we got. And after a while, we thought, this is a load of rubbish. So, okay, let's.
Yeah.
So I turned off the Bunsen burner, turned on the light, and I said, oh, you clear the rest away, I'll go and make some coffee. So I go out of the back lounge where we were doing it in, went down a couple of steps into the kitchen. I turned the light on in the kitchen. There was this goldfish bowl light in the kitchen ceiling. And I turned it on, and there was this peculiar yellowish cast to the light. I looked up; it was half full of water.
Oh.
So what happened was the bathroom was above the kitchen, and the bathroom window was open. And what happened was the rain had blown through, hit the bathroom wall, and it hit the bathroom wall, and there was a gap between the bathroom and the grouting. So it had gone onto the floor and then found its way in through the wiring, you know, because the water finds the lowest level, and it had filled up. Now, no one had left the room, and we weren't stupid children. We were quite sensible, and any of us there, if we'd have seen that, we'd have alerted anyone. But I was the person that left the room, and that. So I mean, somehow or other, the Ouija board had told us that and had tried to warn us.
Yeah. Wow.
And that is pretty good. I mean, that is very good.
Yeah. So I've got a Ouija board behind me there, and it's just a
the
plate on the wall.
original one.
It doesn't move from that position. It stays there, and yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it now.
I'm not tempted. I used to be, but not now.
Yeah.
Spoke to too many people to not go there. So yeah, I only got it for, I suppose, decoration, like, because it's like the studio and what have you. So it goes with everything else. I do keep looking at it, thinking, I think one day I'll look at it and there'll be something near it that'll start moving. It's like, that's when it goes.
Yeah.
It is not staying. So
yeah. So I mean, as we were saying before, I mean, the other one was my UFO thing, which I suppose we could tell you about.
Yeah.
So when I was so as you can see, this stuff's been sort of coming at me pretty much most of my life. And I just used to read about it, but I wouldn't say I was into it. What I was really into though was UFOs, flying saucers. You know, when I was growing up, I remember being 6 when the Warminster thing kicked off. I remember going to bed being absolutely terrified that the Martians were going to invade. You know, that would be 1961. I followed UFOs pretty much all my life, and I absolutely think that there's a lot to that. You know, there's obviously something there. So when I was 14, I used to be really interested in astronomy, and I used to do a lot of sky watching. So I used to sit out we had this window. It's a Victorian house. So there's a main section of the house and the kitchen. So there's a three-story section at the front, and the back was a 2-story section.
Yeah.
And so there was a little window on a landing, and you could sit out and rest your legs on the lower 2-story section roof. Look at the sky. And I had a view of the sky looking north over Tottenham. So to the west was Alexandra Palace, which you could see. To my left. To the right was the main railway line the Liverpool Street line running into Liverpool Street north-south.
Yeah.
And I was looking north. And that night there was this, looked like a quarter of the size of the full moon, but it was below the clouds. And it was just, I don't know, I'm not very good at estimating heights.
No.
300 or 400 feet above the sky, but I can't estimate heights in the sky. I remember looking at it through my binoculars and showing my mum, and she said, I don't know what it is. And it was there, and it was just hovering there. And it was a bit boring, quite honestly. After about an hour or so, I went to bed. And I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember waking up, looking at the clock. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember thinking, I wonder if that light's still there. So I opened up my bedroom window, and it was there. But by that time, the clouds had cleared, and you could see that there were clouds scudding across the sky, like little puffy clouds. You could see the stars, and it was above it. So it was now a clear sky with clouds. You could see the clouds were really moving quite fast, but this thing was stationary. And then as I looked, it started moving. As I looked, so I just got out of bed, it started moving, and it started drifting at first, but then it got faster and faster and faster. And by the time it had crossed from left to right of the horizon, about 150 degrees, it was just belting along, and it shot across the railway line. It looks, do you know in the opening of the original Star Trek series, when you see the starship going like that? It looked like that. It looked like a little point going really fast. And I thought, wow. And then but many years I thought, why did I wake up at that moment? Why did I open my window just at that point to see it go?
It was waiting for you.
I think it was cool. You hear about, I think it was calling me. It woke me up. I don't know if it did something to me. I don't know, but and then again, you know, we think of this in terms of flying saucers and alien spaceships and stuff, but I mean, actually, it was just a light in the sky. So we don't know what it was really. And you could say, you know, spirit light. I mean, I don't know.
That's it. We don't. We just speculate and guess and think we know what it might be, but we know what we've seen, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that at first, but there is a big, big difference between the two.
So I've got Rubenstein's first law of the paranormal. Do you want to hear it?
Go on.
It always ends with aliens. So that's the reason I got this was when I first started getting into this, I was writing a piece of software that calculates rotors for doctors, right? Yeah. So by this time, weird stuff was happening, weird synchronicities. And I thought I was getting into healing because I thought, I don't know, maybe I'm going to become a healer. So there's an article in one of the medical mags, and on the front page, it was about a doctor who'd written about a doctor who was a healer. And I thought, hang on, someone's trying to tell me something. I thought I'd give this doctor a ring. So I rang him up, and he said, hello. He was whispering to me. And I said, hello, I've had these experiences. Oh, it sounds very interesting. And I said, where are you? He said, I'm in my flat in Wimpole Street. I said, why are you whispering? He said, I've got this alien living in my flat with me, but he's very shy. I don't want to disturb him. I remember thinking, is this how it ends? Speaking to, he said he's invisible, but I know he's there. Speaking, thinking that you've got invisible aliens. So, and I thought that, but actually, what happened? But it does end with aliens. What I mean is that whatever door you open with paranormality, you always end up opening them, all of them. So, and one of the common denominators is aliens. Inevitably, you end up with mediums who've got alien spirit guides, or little mini UFOs appearing in the skull experiment, or UFO people experience UFOs and then they start having poltergeist phenomena. It's all linked, in other words.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by that. Yeah.
It's like when I first was doing the pendulum and was talking to my spirit guide. So I was asking, what year was you born? What year did you die? Where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. So give me all this information. I'm writing it down. But this spirit guide was apparently on Earth, it was BC. And obviously, because it goes, once you hit BC, you go backwards. So they give the year that they were born. And then I asked him how old was he when they died. He said 113. So all right, straight away. So what year was that? So they give me the year, wrote it down. So I'm crap at maths, especially working backwards on like a 4-digit number. I'd have to use a calculator.
Yeah.
So I worked it out, and it was 113 years. And that probably took about a minute for me asking the first question to getting the reply to the third question, and me working it out. And I'm just sat there like, I couldn't have. There's no way I could have done that in my own head and got the same answer. I'd have been decades out, not even close.
Have you got any more proof that your guide is who he or she says?
Well, they give me the name, and I checked, and I asked them where they're from, and they said Portugal or Portuguese. So I checked this name on the internet, and it's it's not popular now, but back like 2-3 centuries ago, it was a really popular name. First and like surname and first name. So it just, everything adds up. It's like I couldn't have made this name up. I couldn't have made up the year. Everything to do with it.
Yeah.
If I had a guessed and made it up, there'd be no connection other than me making shit up.
Yeah.
That'd be it. But there's a line goes from one to the other, to the other, to the other.
So spiritualists believe that you should challenge your guides and get absolute proof. With me, I had the most amazing proof, although I'm still not sure about guides. So I've got a couple of guys. But I'll tell you about my guy Koza. So I'm in my surgery one day. Do you remember Derek Akora, the medium Derek Akora?
Yes.
He had an African guy called Sam, and I'm at my surgery doing a surgery, and all of a sudden I feel this presence behind me, and I feel like it's an African warrior. And I said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm your African guide." And I thought, I fancy one of them. Like, I'll have an African guide like Derek Akora. He could be quite useful. And I said, "Well, what's your name?" And he said, "Call me Koza." So I typed Koza into Google. And,
same as what I did.
I got XHOSA, not KOSA. I said, that's like the tribe. It's actually pronounced Koza. It's a click language. But he said, "No, call me Koza." I said, "Is that your name or your tribe?" And he said, "It doesn't matter. Just call me Koza." So he said he was a Koza warrior from the Victorian days. And he said that we were together in a previous life. And he showed me that we were on board a ship off the East Cape in a naval battle.
Oh.
And he showed me as a sort of thin young naval officer. And he was a naval officer as well, I think as well. Anyway, it's all a bit vague there. Anyway, so you're meant to sort of get some evidence that your guide's there. So now I'm worrying about this because I had a great problem with spirit guides because I could understand that you could speak to departed spirits. Don't have a problem with that. But spirit guides, how do they work? I mean, what would it be like being chained to be someone's spirit guide? You know.
Well, this is what I was thinking. Are they just my spirit guide? What are they doing when I'm not?
Well, exactly. And isn't it boring hanging around? I mean, I can answer some of these questions. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get some proof first of all. So, and I'm thinking about this. It's driving me nuts. I mean, can they see me when I'm in the toilet, for God's sake? I mean, stuff like that. And what do they see anyway? What does it look like?
Do they see us, our physical
Yeah.
body, or do they
Yeah.
see our energy?
Well, no, I've got some answers. But anyway, so I'm thinking about this all the time. So this was 6 months after I got into spiritualism. So a year before that, my son Paul had recorded Lara Croft and the Cradle of Life.
Yeah.
Have you seen that film?
Yes,
So,
yes.
and it was sitting on as a videotape. This is how long we are. Yeah, videotape on top of the video recorder, and
Yep.
hadn't watched it, and everyone had gone to bed, and I was sat there worrying about it. I thought, oh, hang it, I'm gonna stop this. I'll watch this. I quite like Angelina Jolie. She's quite visually appealing, so I'll put her on. And I'm getting into it. I'm thinking halfway. I'm thinking this is just a kids' film, and then I start thinking about Koza again. I think, what is going on here? Because this is serious shit. You know, I'm a doctor. I'm interacting with voices in my head telling me the spirit guides. What is going on here? And I'm thinking, is this like software running on my mind? Like my computer's got Word and Excel, and I'm Word and this is Excel. All sorts of crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And as I'm thinking this, Angelina Jolie picks up the phone and says, "Tell Koza to meet me north of the village. We're off to Kilimanjaro." And I said, "What?" I thought, this is got. I'm now getting messages on the TV. This is what schizophrenics get.
Synchronicity.
Pause it, rewind. It's still there. That's got my attention. The next half of the film is her with her friend and guide Koza fighting off evil spirits on the plains of Kilimanjaro. And I'm thinking, what's going on here?
There's your sign. That's your sign straight away.
The next day, I go to my circles on a Thursday. Oh, sorry, it was on a Tuesday. And I said, how did this happen? They said, well, they can do that. So they can do that. I mean, well, you guys go, yeah, but how? I mean, you know, so we were saying that they're not gods, they're guides. How does it work? Because she had to be in it. I had to watch it. My son Paul had to record it. They had to be funded. There were so many coincidences. How did that happen? They said, oh, they can do that. That's a very unsatisfying answer. But I had to accept the fact that this is all part of the way the universe works. In other words, the universe wanted this to happen so I could get the message. So, you know, so it's not like the guides are all powerful. I mean, if they're real, they probably didn't even know. It was just, that's how the universe works.
Yeah.
So
it picks something that would connect you to your spirit guide, and it just happens to be that.
And it gets worse, though. It gets worse. So my son Josh is a medical student at the time, and he's so I'm still worrying about this. So I'm going into my gym, and my psychic patient Barbara comes up to me, and she's angry with me. She said, "I've had your flipping African guy with me all night, Ian." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, he's telling me he can't get through to you. He says you're so bloody dense." He said he's going to prove to you that he's real. I said, "Oh, thanks, Barbara." So so at the end of the day, I come in, and my son Josh is he's just qualified as a doctor, and he's going to do his first house job at Harlow Hospital, and he's packing up. And he doesn't talk about his girlfriends, but he looks a bit rueful, and he says, "Oh, Dad, I've got this new girlfriend." And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, and I know he was dating black girls at the time because his view was black is beautiful. So I said, I said, "Oh, is she African or Afro-Caribbean?" He said, "African." I thought, hang on a minute. I said, "What tribe is she?" And he looked at me and said, What do you mean? What tribe is she? He said, "Yeah, what are you talking about, Dad? You know, are you some sort of closet racist all of a sudden? You know, why think they're all in tribes?" She's a medical student a year below me, and her mum's a head teacher. I said, "Is she a Koza?" And he looks at me and says, "Dad, that's her surname."
Oh my God.
Her surname is a Sander Koza, and she was a Koza, member of the Koza tribe. She's very unusual. So I met her. I mean, they didn't go out for very long. She's a nice girl. And she read my book. And so when Koza shows himself to me, he shows his ankle with a particular anklet around it, which he's very proud of. It's got some pattern work on it. And so when she read this, she said, she was flying to visit her folks in Cape Town. And she said, I almost fell off the seat when I read it, because she said, that is exactly what Koza men of that generation would have worn, and their prospective wives would have had that. She said it was dead accurate. That was proof. I mean,
Yeah.
that,
You can't get much more than that than
no, I know, and I don't know how
being there.
Yeah, and that's another thing that did my head in. But yeah, so I've got Koza, but when I've got a couple of other guys, but it's not like they're. Oh, so you want to know about? This question is, are they there all the time? And what my guys have told me is, it's not like that, and it's like
No.
just as think of it like this: just as we're always in the back of your mind, you're always in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
So we're linked by thought, and we know what's going on when we think about it. But
yeah,
it's not like they're there. We're with you all the time, but we've got other things to do. We've got our own life.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting way of thinking of it. So yeah, I mean, it's very, very weird.
It is, but it's a good word.
Yeah,
it's an exciting word.
Well, it is, because I'm speaking to people like you in this sort of thing. I mean, if you'd have told me 20 years ago that you'll end up with this other life, having got a book out of it and being on TV about it and being, it's very nice. I mean, it's all very nice. I mean, but it's not. I mean, it's the other thing is your ego you got to be careful of your ego. It can turn your head a bit.
Feet on the ground.
You got to keep your feet on the ground. But I mean, with me, it's like I'm not. I mean, I am just got an ordinary life with ordinary problems, and this stuff I do occasionally. And it's nice to be able to offer them his shit when I can. And I'm struggling to become a platform medium like the other 5 or 6 members of my group, and that's not easy. I don't know how good we've got another fledgling night, a bit old to be a fledgling, but in a couple of weeks, in Stevenage, which I'm a bit worried about, because you do wonder what you're going to get, or if you're going to get anything.
Yeah.
That's it. I think that's
You'll
my
have to let
story.
me know where these are, because I'm not too far from Stevenage.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
I'm Northampton, aren't I? It's on the other side of Bedford for me.
Yeah.
So
they're often broadcast. I mean, they're all around on Facebook and things like this. This one is for trainee mediums. They have like a selected audience. It's so you can just give messages in a non-threatening environment, because spiritualist churches, they'll throw, if you give a bad message, some of them they'll throw tomatoes at you.
You've been Stevenage.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Oh, massive thank you for coming on. Absolutely loved it. And I wish all doctors were the same as you, to be honest.
Well, I don't, because you've got to have some normal ones.
No, don't do normal. Don't like normal. Normal's boring.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice though to get some more stuff about the UFO stuff. I was getting so excited over everything that happens, and when the Disclosure Act got quashed by those 2 Republican guys, congressmen, bearing in mind that every other person voted it through, there's some pretty powerful forces don't want this out, eh?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. Yeah. Hiding more than they letting go of.
Yeah.
But you are more than welcome to come on again and give us more info and documentation.
Yeah. Well, when the aliens land, when they broadcast that, hopefully this year.
Yeah. Not too far away either.
Yeah.
But now we've got a couple of dates on Wednesdays. If you're available on a Wednesday evening, if you want to come back on.
Now Wednesdays I do late surgeries on Wednesdays.
Dear. Right.
Yeah, I can't do those.
Fridays are done, but I might be able to fit you on. Well, got contact details, so I'll drop you a couple of dates and
schedule something later on in the
year. Yeah. Whenever you want.
Okay.
So massive thank you for coming on, and thank you to Neil Ward for connecting us too.
Yeah, Neil's a great guy. He knows everybody as well. He's into fairies. He's an expert in fairies. Yeah. It's a whole field that is. I know,
it's just
that's a very
I've got one of his books. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've not read it yet. I've not read any of the books that I've got, but I'll get them.
Okay, Andy. Right. Well,
massive thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll keep in touch and we'll sort something out.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Okay.
Bye. All right. Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for staying. I know it went on a bit longer than normal, but I wasn't going to cut this short. It was too good to end. Fortunately, Nicole had to go due to the time it is in New York. But thank you, everyone, for staying in the questions. Sorry, didn't get to read all the questions out, but it's just how it goes sometimes. On what day are we on now? So yeah, on Sunday, sorry, we've got the Staticon. So that's starting at 5 p.m. UK time, 12 noon EST. And then next Wednesday, we've got Dave Hodrian. He does a UFO sighting database thing with what's his name? Gary Heseltine. So that's just started. So hopefully he's going to be talking about that. Yeah, and that's it really. So we've done the 10 gift giveaways for the membership for this month. There is going to be a members only meeting this month as well. I'm not sure what date. It is possibly going to be the 16th or the 23rd. But I'm not sure what time, but I'll keep you all updated with that anyway. And we are going to be doing a meet-up in Cannock Chase, but that's probably going to be April now, not March, because just too much going on this month. But no, massive thank you to everyone for joining in. Sorry about the trolls, but now and again you do get them, and we just got more than what we normally get. So that's it. Right, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys on Sunday at 5 p.m. So take care and goodbye.
Goodbye.